Hello, my name is Mark Clayton. I'm the tabla player and software developer that made this software, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you to the Indian Tabla drums. That's why we're here. These are the drums. This is a tabla set, and you probably know already, but in case you didn't, a tabla set consists of two drums. We have the big one, which is known as the baya, the bayan, or the daga or the dagi. In Indian music there's many names for the same thing, which can be confusing, but if you just choose one name then things become a bit simpler, so I'm going to stick with bayan. This will be the bayan for me. And this big drum is usually made of metal these days. They were originally made of clay, and I guess they probably broke a little bit too often. So nowadays they're made from steel or copper or brass, and the better ones are made from brass or copper. They tend to sound better. This one's made from copper, and generally the heavier the drum is, the better the drum is, for several reasons. The more metal you've got, the more resonance and the louder the sound, plus the fact that it stays still. It's much easier to play a drum that stays still than a drum that moves around. So it's good that the drum stays where it is while you're playing it. The other drum is called the tabla, or the dayan, or the daya. So again, you've got many names. Tabla is fine. In fact, bayan and dayan just mean left and right. So they're referring to, this is the left drum, this is the right drum. Of course, that's only the case if you're right-handed, because generally speaking, you use your dominant hand to play this one. So, if you're learning the tabla, you first of all decide which way around you're going to have the drums. If you're left-handed, you might well want to put this one on this side. I'm right-handed, so my tabla is here, my bayan is here. Okay, so these two drums, they have different roles. This is the bass drum. The bayan makes a bass sound, and you can re-pitch the sound of the drum with pressure from your wrist, and that's a great feature of this drum, and we'll look at that much later. So this is bass sounds predominantly. This drum is the treble sounds predominantly. So you can get a lot of interesting resonant sounds from this drum also, and the reason why you get these resonant sounds is this black spot that appears on both drums. On this one it's not in the center, this one it is. This is called the tihai, and without this you wouldn't have the sustain. You get a lot of sustain with these drums, and that's all down to the amazing technology of the tihai, and how that creates the resonance and the harmonics. There's some good sustain on that sound. You can hear the sustain. The sustain means that the sound tails off. So you get a note and then it tails off. It continues for some time. As opposed to a sound which doesn't have sustain. Now you could call these types of sound resonant and non-resonant. So you could say that's a resonant sound and that's a non-resonant sound. And you can categorize the sounds of the tabla into those. Resonance, quite a clumsy word though, so I think I would prefer to use open and closed. That's open and there's closed. So you've got these two groups. So the resonant sounds are generally a bit more difficult to play. So we start with the non-resonant, the closed. We'll start with some closed sounds first because they're a bit easier to understand. Okay, so before we start looking at the strokes, I'm going to talk a bit about the positioning of the drums. Well, first of all, before we talk about the positioning of the drums, we should talk about the positioning of ourselves, because how you sit and your posture is very, very important. And if you don't get that right, you'll be introducing problems from the start. So sitting cross-legged is by far the best way to play this instrument. And that's not possible for everybody. Some people have problems with their knees and their hips, and it could be too uncomfortable to sit in this way. So the most important thing is to be comfortable, because if you're comfortable, then you can relax, and you have to be relaxed. You can't introduce tension into your playing because that will ruin everything basically. So sit however you can feel comfortable. Now if that means that you have to sit on your shins like this, then maybe that's what you have to do if you can't do cross-legged. Or you can put one leg out to the side, either side, whatever will make you feel comfortable. But by far the best way is to sit cross-legged like this. Okay, you should have the middle of the drums in line with the middle of you, and the drums should be almost touching. Right, so now we've got round to the position of the drums. This drum should be pretty much level, possibly tilted slightly forwards, with the tihai on the far side, as I said before, or possibly a little bit to the right here, my right. Okay, and the tabla should be pointing slightly forwards. But really, the important thing is when you put your hands on the drums, this should feel comfortable, so your arms nice and relaxed on here, and your elbows are relaxed and down, shoulders are relaxed and down, there's no tension. And some people say that if you see a tabla player from behind, they should look like they're not doing anything, because you shouldn't see the tension or the movement in the shoulders. They should all be relaxed, and that's the best way to play. You can look in the mirror as well. It's a very good way to check whether you're sitting correctly, is to have a mirror in front of you and see how relaxed you look. Because if you look tense, then something's not right, and your practice won't be working properly. Before the tabla came along, there was another drum which was widely used in temples in India called the pakhawaj, and this drum was a long-bodied wooden drum with goat skins on each end, and it looks a little bit, it's still widely used, looks a bit like if you stick the two drums together back to back like that, then you can imagine a long body in the middle there. It's a bit like that. And the story goes that one day during a competition or some kind of event, a pakhawaj was broken in two at an emotional juncture in time, and two drums were created from the one, and so the tabla was born. That's the story. A lot of compositions that were originally on the pakhawaj have been moved over to the tabla. So the tabla's kind of inherited some of these, many compositions that were originally only on the pakhawaj. How do you go about learning the sounds of the tabla? Well, every sound on the tabla has its own name, and the way we describe this system is we call it bol. So this word bol means we're connecting the sound we play on the tabla to a word. And so that means that you can speak tabla compositions without playing them. So it makes things very easy to abstract the rhythm into a form that you can put in your mind and remember. This is the idea of using the tabla language, which is built up from these bowls. So for instance, if I wanted to take this rhythm, I could just say na na tu tu, na na tu tu, and then people would know, other tabla players perhaps would know what I mean, because this is na and this is tu or tun. So every sound, it has this word called bowl which relates to the sound. So you can then chain them together. Na na te te. And there we've got it straight away. So if you write that down on a piece of paper, you've notated the rhythm. So it's a form of notation. Pivoting from the wrist, and you should have the heel of your hand very close to the edge of the tihai, letting your hand fall. Fingers can be together or a tiny bit apart. So non-resonant sound, short and sharp. That's ke. This is ge. Playing with the middle finger, striking the area of skin there between the outer ring here and the tihai. Inside this area here, close to the tihai, that's where you're striking. And you're swinging your finger and bouncing it off the skin. If you play ge twice, second time, use the index finger, which is a bit more difficult. I'm making very small ge there. So let's make two big ge. So alternating between the middle finger and the index finger. You can also use these three fingers together and the index finger. Whatever works for you. And you can re-pitch the drum, so you can play a high one first and then an open one. Or you can play an open one first and then a high one. And you can try those with just two fingers as well. So that's ge. Te is played on a dayan or tabla with the right hand. Now these three fingers are together, the index finger is up, and we're landing in the middle of the drum. This is te. Now you can use a little bit of powder to stop your fingers sticking to the drum. I've got a little bit of talcum powder here. Put it on my hands. Okay, that's better. Now that's the first stroke. If you play te twice, te, te. Second one is the index finger, also landing in the middle. So again, alternating between this and this. Another way to play te is using just two fingers and leaving this finger down where it would be to play na. So first finger lands in the middle of the drum, and so does the second one. This is used in a lot of Delhi compositions, and it means that you can get to na without having to reposition this finger. You can move it forwards and back slightly. So slightly forward for tete, and then back for na. Tu or tun is played on the dhyan or tabla, and this stroke is played by making the open sound. So you're letting it completely resonate. You're striking with the index finger, and this stroke is made on the edge, and it doesn't have to touch, at the end of your finger, it doesn't have to touch the center of the drum. So you're striking the edge of the drum. And it's good to have a slight twisting motion. This will mean that you can play this stroke, and then you'll be ready to play na afterwards. So tu na would be played like this. And you've got, in between the two strokes, the movement of the ring finger coming down and silently landing where it needs to be for the na stroke. Din is tu or tun played with ge. So we've got ge, tu or tun together. That's din, D-I-N. The next stroke is na. This is played on the dhyan or tabla. This is a very difficult stroke, so I'll break it down as much as possible. Right hand on the drum in this shape. Try and lift up the second finger, the middle finger, and the ring finger should be touching the skin, resting just behind the shahi, actually touching the skin. And the index finger and the thumb should be fairly close together. The little finger should just neatly sit next to the ring finger. And the idea is that we're striking the edge of the drum, but we're keeping the ring finger down. So this is the sound we're looking for. And you're coming down, striking, making the sound, and then lifting as fast as you can after you've made the sound. And using the pad of the finger. This is where, close to the end of your finger, this is what you should be using to hit the drum. Now there's a bit of motion this way, but there's also a twisting motion. So you're combining the twisting with this movement here. And this finger should be sitting around about 25 past. If this is like a face of a clock, then you can imagine the 5 or 25 past is here. That's where this finger should sit, and you should be striking nearly a quarter of the way around. over here. This stroke is called na, but it's also known as ta. It can be na or ta. Da, which is D-H-A, that is a combination of the strokes na or ta and ge. So it's this stroke and this stroke. Na or ta and ge at the same time. That's da. First exercise, let's look at te, 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 te. So the te is falling in the middle finger in the middle, then index finger in the middle. This is the same for everything. Te, te, ke, te, Take care that you're not resting your hand on the drum. In the case of the right hand on the tabla, you're lifting your hand in between the strokes. This one is obviously resting on the drum, so you treat them differently. For your right hand, you're pivoting from the elbow, so that's the action coming from the elbow, and with the left hand pivoting at the wrist. Te, te, ke, ke, na, na, ke, ke, na, na. Number one. Number two. Number three. Number four. Number five. Number six. So all these exercises played a bit faster. Let's hear what that sounds like. And then from 1. Tira kita. Now this is a combination of strokes. Ti, re, ki, ta. Ti, re is played the same as tete. So that's the first bit. Ti, re, and then ki is just a ke. And then ta at the end is another te. So it's a combination. It's a shorthand way of saying te, te, ki, ta. And we say it as te, re, ki, ta. Te, re, ki, ta. Te, re, ki, ta. So on the subject of kaidas, it's worth me pointing out that the kaida is a type of composition which is played in tabla solo, and it's a theme-based composition. So the first bit that we play, the very first thing that we play is the theme, and then all these variations that come afterwards, they're played in sequence, and these shift through varying certain elements that are used within the main theme and reordering them and stressing them in different ways. But always we end the end of the first half and the end of the second half in the same way, each way. You'll notice that in the first kaida we had da da tu na at the end of the first half and da da din na at the end of the second half. And that pattern is preserved all the way through, and this is part of the structure, part of the rules of how kaida works. Actually, the word kaida means rule, so it's a very structured form of composition. And at the end of the variations, when we get to the end of the variations, we play the tihai to conclude. The tihai is a conclusion of the kaida. And then we can move on after that, move on to something else. Now the variations that we have are all fixed, so they've been written for us. But when the masters play the kaidas, they improvise and they spontaneously create their own variations, which will adhere to the rules. So the rules are that you need to keep to the endings, so the main theme is incorporated into each variation, and the rest of the variation, the first bit that you hear and the bit that you hear in the kali, they have to mirror each other. So essentially one is the same as the other, but one has the bass, has the buyer, and the other one doesn't. And the most important rule of qaida is that you can't use any bowls in your variations that haven't appeared in the main theme. So that's another thing to consider. But all these things don't really matter as a beginner. You just learn the variations and you play the variations. So I'm just telling you this is a matter of interest. It's worth noting that when you have tu or tun, then when it's in a qaida, nearly always it's best to play ka at the same time as the tu or tun. So it just makes it crisper, more defined. So da da tun na is. So the first qaida, Delhi qaida. Here we go. First variation, dhora. Next variation, number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Tihai. Okay, here's that first qaida played a bit faster. tihai at the end. The second qaida is really, it's the same thing as the first qaida, except that we're swapping out tete for tete. So we're playing 4 te strokes instead of 2 in the same space. So we're playing it twice as fast. So instead of da da te te, we're playing da da te 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 te. So let's have a look at this main theme. And dhora. Next variation, number 1. Variation 2. Variation 3. Variation 4. Variation 5. And the tihai. Three. In the third qaida, we're just exchanging the tete from the last one to tirikita. So instead of playing, we're now going to play tirikita. That was half the speed. Sorry to mislead you. We want tirikita, tirikita, tirikita. Okay, so now we're going to play da da tirikita, da da tirikita, da. So the rest of the theme is all the same. We're just swapping out the tete bowls for tirikita. So here's that main theme again. is dhora. Variation 1. Variation 2. Variation 3. Variation 4. Variation 5. And the tihai. One, two, three. One, two, three. Let's hear that last qaida a little bit faster. This is qaida 4. This is a much longer theme than we've had with the other qaidas. This one is very long, so it's a bit more challenging, and I'm just going to give you the main theme and dhora, and that's all, because this one's a very long qaida and should keep you busy for a while. I'm going to use the 2-finger tete for this kaida. So this is the main theme. I'll speak it first. Gina da, gina tete, gina da ge, dinna gina tete, gina da ge tete, gina da ge, tuna kena, kina ta tete, gina ta ge, dinna gena tete, gina da ge tete, gina da ge, dinna gena. Da ge, dinna gena appears at the end. That is da, ge, din, na, ge, na. So the left hand is going da, ge, din, na, ge, na. So if we call this 1 and 2, then we're going 2, 1, 2, 1. So alternating the left hand twice. 2, 1, 2, 1. And you've got that gap because there's the na in between those strokes. Da, ge, din, na, ge, na. So the main theme goes like this. There's a rest there, so it's na, da, rest, na, te, te, na, da, ge, na, ge, na. That's the first quarter. Second quarter. Third quarter. Ina ta, ina te te, ina ta ke, na ke na. Ina ta, ina te te, ina ta ke, na ke na. Last quarter. So the whole thing. Ina da, ina te te, ina da ge, ina ge na te te, ina da ge te te, ina da ge, ina ge na, ina da, ina te te, ina da ge, ina ge na te te, ina. Bit faster. Faster still. So dhora, this variation is repeating the first quarter twice as a prefix. So we're using ina da, ina te te, ina da So we're adding that twice to the start. You already did a simple Tala exercise earlier on in an earlier unit, and that was with the 4 beats. Now we're starting to appreciate that the things that we're learning are in tin tal, which means a 16-beat tal structure, and it's a very particular structure that's very common, and in fact most compositions are in tin tal. And that's a 16-beat matrix. So the best way to visualize tin tal is 4 blocks of 4. So here are the 4 blocks of 4. Each block of 4 is called a vibhag, and the first vibhag has the sum as the first element. So sum means the first of the 16. So that's the one that we tend to emphasize the most, because that is the beginning of the cycle. Okay, so tin tal is spoken using the teka. Teka means the basic form. It's the very least that you use to represent tin tal. So this sounds a bit complicated. I know already it sounds a little bit complicated. But if we want to speak tin tal, how do we speak it? Well, we could just speak 1 to 16. That's one way to do it. But we want to speak, what would the tabla player play if he hasn't got a composition in mind? If he's just marking the cycle, well, he would play this very basic form called teka. And you can embellish teka, but the most simple form of it would go like this. Da, din, din, da, da, din, da, da, din, ta, din, da. So the da and the din have a bass sound in them, and the ta and the tin have no bass sound. So I could speak it again and emphasize the bass more. Da, din, da, da, din, da, da, din, ta, din, da. Now we need to demonstrate how you clap tin tal as well, because this is an important way to keep the tal, and you can use the clap whilst you speak a composition in tin tal. So let's just look at how the clap works. So to represent 4 beats, we can go clap and then use these fingers, starting with the ring finger, 2, and the middle finger, 3, then the index finger, 4. So clap, 2, 3, 4. Clap, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and tin tal has
the 4 groups of 4 vibugs, but the third one is called the empty one. It has a name Kali, meaning the empty one, because the bass drops out for the third quarter, and that's so that you know where you are in the cycle. That gives the cycle some form, some shape. So that is also represented in the clap. So when we're clapping Tintal, the first 2 groups of 4 are like this: clap, 2, 3, 4. And then the second group of 4, clap, 2, 3, 4. Now the third group of 4 are different. In Kali, we go wave. This is called wave, where you present your palm, and then we do 2, 3, 4. So the same fingers as before: the ring finger, middle finger, index finger, just putting them together with the thumb. And then the last 4 beats, same as the first 2 groups: clap, 2, 3, 4. So all together you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I'll do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's another system for counting Tintal using your hands, and this is more for checking that compositions work, because if you're speaking a composition, you want to make sure that it fits into the cycle, or that it's correct, that beats are falling in the right place, etc. Then this is another way of working with the cycle. It's a very simple system. If you just look at the palm of your right hand, then you can see you've got where your knuckles are. You've got 2 knuckle joints in the middle there, and you can treat this end of your finger, the 2 knuckle joints, and the end of your finger as 4 points. So if you've got 4 points per finger, then you've got 16 points, because you've got your 4 fingers here. So it's like you've got a matrix of 4 by 4. So you can use those to count with your thumb: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Playing a percussion instrument such as tabla requires that you play with good timing, and the training of timing in Indian music is called tala, and it's a separate subject actually in some respects, because it's completely independent of the technique of how you play the drums. And because of the bowl system, which is the idea that you can speak the sounds of the drums without having to play the drums or even have the drums with you, means that you can deal with the tala side of things totally separately, which is a great thing. So if we go to the most elementary rhythm that we could use. The easiest one to start with, of course, is just 4 beats, a 4-beat cycle, because, well, at least in Western culture, most music is a 4-beat bar, and it's just a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, and the emphasis would be on the 1. So you would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is a good starting point. We should all be familiar with a 4-beat bar, 4-beat count. If you have experience of being a musician already, then this will seem very simple to you, I'd imagine, and you can skip right on to the more complicated stuff. Those that haven't played music before, if this is the first time you've engaged with a musical instrument, then it's well worth trying these things out, because it's not always second nature. Okay, so first of all, let's clap a 4-beat bar. Now the idea is that you speak and you clap at the same time, and then you're reinforcing the idea of the cycle. Your hands are marking the time, your mouth is marking the beats, and then we're creating this cycle. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You can make the 1 a bit louder. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So what if we decided to put a pattern of bowls, a really simple rhythm, over the top of this count? Now the idea of this, just to explain why we're doing this, because it might look a bit unnecessary, the idea is that we need to independently consider the time cycle and what we're playing. So imagine that in one part of your brain you're thinking time cycle, and in one part of your brain you're thinking, what am I playing? And these are 2 separate things, but they need to work together, because Indian music involves very strong use of time cycles, and you need to know where the first beat of the cycle is, and that's very important in this music. So this all revolves around time cycles. So we're starting with our 4-beat time cycle. At the same time, we could speak a very simple composition. This is just an exercise. We can use the bowls ta and te. We don't know how to play them yet, but that doesn't matter. That's not a problem, because we're just speaking the bowl. So we're going to have 4 lines to speak, and the first line is ta 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 ta. So that's just this bowl ta. We don't know how to play it. We'll learn in a little while. We're just using ta 4 times. Then the second line, ta ta te te. So we've got 2 tas and 2 tes. We don't know how to play te. Doesn't matter. We'll find out shortly. Okay. So ta ta te te. That's the second line. Third line, ta te te ta. And fourth line, te te ta ta. So now let's speak all 4 lines. When we get to the end, we'll go back to the beginning. But the important thing is we emphasize the first beat of each 4 group. So ta 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 te te ta te te ta te te ta ta. And we can show our emphasis in our clap by moving the clap a bit further away for the first beat as well. That's something else we can do. Ta 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 te te ta te te ta te te ta ta. Okay, and once you feel comfortable with that, try speeding it up so it becomes a bit more of a challenge. Ta 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 te te ta, te, te, ta, te, te, ta, 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 te, te, ta, te, te, ta, te, te, ta, ta. Okay.